There are scandals in Fairmont Crest that explode like fireworks, and then there are scandals that arrive in silence, dressed like ordinary paperwork, carrying the power to ruin lives before anyone even understands what is happening. Madison's lawsuit belongs to the second kind. It does not begin with a public scream or a shattered glass confrontation. It begins with a question so simple that it becomes dangerous. Why is Madison so terrified if she has done nothing wrong? From that moment on, the case stops being a professional problem and starts turning into something far more intimate, far more poisonous. It becomes a test of love, of loyalty, of power, and of whether the truth inside the Hamilton orbit can survive once fear begins speaking louder than reason. At first, everything about this situation invites the kind of suspicion people try to dismiss because it feels too easy. Madison is sued, and almost immediately she spirals. Not merely worried, not quietly defensive, but visibly shaken in a way that suggests the lawsuit has touched a nerve far deeper than professional inconvenience. Innocent people panic too, of course. In Fairmont Crest, innocence has never protected anyone from scandal. Yet Madison's reaction carries the weight of recognition, as if the accusation has not only threatened her future but struck directly at something she has been trying not to name even to herself. That is what makes the first layer of this story so compelling. The danger is not in what the lawsuit says on paper. The danger is in the possibility that Madison sees more truth in it than she wants anyone else to see. Chelsea feels that shift before she can explain it. Until now, her relationship with Madison has existed in a glow that made the world feel briefly manageable. Their engagement had given her the fragile, stubborn hope that happiness could be built in a place where nearly every beautiful thing comes with a hidden fracture. So when Madison begins to unravel, Chelsea's first instinct is not suspicion, but protection. She wants to close ranks, shut out the noise, and believe that love means standing beside the woman she chose without hesitation. But love becomes far more complicated the moment it senses a wall where trust used to be. Chelsea notices the way Madison answers too quickly, then too slowly. She notices the gaps in the story, the defensive exhaustion, the strange emotional violence of someone who seems less angry at being accused than terrified of what might be uncovered next. The lawsuit starts as an outside attack, but inside the relationship it becomes a quiet and brutal rearrangement of certainty. That is where the deeper emotional architecture of the story reveals itself. The real question is no longer whether Madison is legally vulnerable. It is whether Chelsea ever knew the full shape of the woman she promised to stand beside. In soap opera terms, that question is more explosive than any evidence because legal trouble can be fought. Public scandal can be survived. But once intimacy is infected by the idea that one partner has been carefully editing herself for the other, every touch, every reassurance, every old memory becomes unstable. Chelsea does not need proof of betrayal to feel betrayed. She only needs the sensation that Madison is afraid of the truth in a way that excludes her. Naomi enters this crisis from a different emotional angle, and that is what makes her role so rich. On the surface, she steps in to help. She aligns with Bill, moves quickly, and seems prepared to do exactly what a competent, loyal protector should do when someone in the circle is under attack. But Naomi is too sharp, too emotionally seasoned, and too aware of how power distorts appearances to become a simple rescuer. She can comfort Madison and still be studying her. She can defend Chelsea's future while quietly testing whether that future is built on sand. Naomi understands something that the more romantic characters often resist. Panic is evidence, even when it does not prove guilt. A person may not be guilty of the crime described in the complaint and still be guilty of something adjacent to it: an omission, a compromise, an unethical shortcut, a desperate past decision that now returns wearing the language of justice. That is why Naomi becomes one of the most fascinating presences in the storyline. She is not choosing between compassion and truth. She is trying to hold both at once. And that balancing act is exactly what can destroy a person in a family like this. Her dilemma grows sharper the more Madison leans into helplessness. If Madison were cold, arrogant, or combative, Naomi's path would be easier. But vulnerability has always been the most dangerous camouflage in worlds like this one. A frightened woman is easy to rally around. A wounded fiancé is easy to protect. A lawsuit filed at the exact moment a happy future seems within reach is easy to read as sabotage. Yet timing cuts both ways. The case arrives too conveniently, which makes it feel planned. But it also arrives too precisely, which raises a darker possibility. Someone knew exactly when Madison would be least able to survive exposure. Someone may have been waiting until her life was finally stable enough to shatter properly. In that reading, the lawsuit is not random at all. It is strategic. It is aimed at maximum psychological damage. That strategic quality is what pulls Bill into the center of suspicion. In another story, Bill rushing in to help would read as strength. Here it reads like a complication. He moves too fast, too confidently, too instinctively, as though he already understands the machinery behind the accusation before the dust has even settled. Men like Bill do not merely solve crises. They absorb them, redirect them, and, when necessary, use them. The question surrounding him is not whether he has the power to help Madison. It is whether his help comes with invisible terms. Bill's influence always carries that tension. Protection from him is never emotionally neutral. It creates debt, reshapes loyalties, and often leaves the rescued person less free than before. That makes his alliance with Naomi especially charged. She may believe she is partnering with the strongest available force to keep Madison from collapse, but she also knows that every crisis Bill touches becomes part of his broader map of control. And once that suspicion is introduced, the lawsuit changes form again. Maybe Madison is not the true target at all. Maybe she is the most vulnerable entry point into a much larger strike. That possibility deepens everything because it repositions Bill from savior to potential catalyst. Did Bill open a door for Madison professionally, give her opportunities that also exposed her to enemies, push her into circles where compromise became the cost of advancement? Even if he never intended harm, men like him often create danger simply by building ladders that end above a pit. If Madison climbed because she was ambitious, eager, and desperate to prove herself, then Bill may have become the architect of risk long before the lawsuit arrived. And if the person suing her is really trying to hit Bill through a more fragile body, then Madison's terror makes terrible sense. She may not just be afraid of losing her career. She may be afraid of becoming disposable in a war she never fully understood she had entered. Chelsea, meanwhile, is forced into the cruelest emotional position of all. She wants to be the woman who believes first and questions later. She wants to defend love against cynicism, especially in a community where nearly every romance is eventually tested by secrets. But the more people around her start moving with urgency, the more impossible simple faith becomes. Naomi's restraint unsettles her. Bill's efficiency unsettles her even more. The lawsuit itself feels less like a misunderstanding and more like the first page of a history Madison never finished telling. Chelsea starts replaying every small inconsistency she ignored because she was happy. The old half answers, the abrupt changes in tone when work came up, the moments when Madison seemed grateful to be loved and frightened to be known. In that psychological space, heartbreak begins before any confirmed revelation. Chelsea is not grieving a proven lie yet. She is grieving the possibility that her love story was built on selective access. This is where the narrative reaches its most powerful emotional territory, because Madison does not need to be a villain for the damage to be real. In fact, the most devastating version of this story is not that Madison is secretly evil. It is that she is compromised. That she is neither as corrupt as her enemies want to paint her nor as spotless as Chelsea needs to believe. People often survive difficult systems by making decisions they later bury beneath reinvention. They tell themselves they did what was necessary. They call it pressure, survival timing, bad mentorship, institutional rot. And sometimes all of that is true, but necessity does not erase consequence. If Madison once signed something she should not have signed, protected someone she should have exposed, accepted a favor that later became a trap, then the lawsuit is not merely an attack. It is the return of an unfinished moral debt. That is why her panic matters so much. Innocent people fear punishment. Compromised people fear recognition. Madison reads like someone who does not know which one she is anymore. She may have spent so long trying to outrun the worst interpretation of herself that she no longer knows how to separate what was done to her from what she allowed. This creates a far more layered tragedy than a straightforward guilt twist. It turns her into a woman trapped between the version of herself Chelsea loves and the version of herself the lawsuit threatens to drag into daylight. The gap between those two selves is where all the drama lives. Naomi understands this sooner than anyone else. That is why her conflict becomes unbearable. If she saves Madison first, she may be preserving Chelsea's happiness at the cost of the truth. If she exposes the truth first, she may destroy Chelsea in the name of integrity. There is no clean choice. And because Naomi is emotionally intelligent enough to see the difference between legal innocence and moral innocence, she becomes the one character least likely to accept easy narratives. She can look at Madison and see fear without surrendering judgment. She can see Bill's usefulness without forgetting his appetite for control. She can even recognize that the family itself may be at risk. If Madison's lawsuit is tied not to one isolated professional error but to a broader web of patronage, influence, and buried arrangements, then this is no longer about one woman's credibility. It is about whether the Hamilton orbit has been living on protected illusions. Bill's behavior only intensifies that possibility. He does not respond like a man encountering chaos for the first time. He responds like a man recognizing an old battlefield. There is history in his speed, which means there may be memory in his fear. If he is helping Madison because he cares, that care is already entangled with power. If he is helping because he knows the suit can grow teeth, then he may be less interested in justice than containment. The crucial distinction in stories like this is that containment often wears the face of rescue. Bill may genuinely intend to shield Madison, but in doing so he may also be deciding which truths are survivable and which must be buried. That is not mercy. That is management. By the time the emotional dust settles, the central question has transformed completely. The audience no longer asks only whether Madison will beat the lawsuit. That is too small. The real question is what will remain if she does. If Naomi and Bill crush the threat, if the legal fire is controlled, if Chelsea stands by her and the public scandal is neutralized, will that actually restore anything? Or will survival itself expose the more painful truth that the relationship cannot return to innocence because innocence was the first casualty? In Beyond the Gates, victory has always been unstable. A person can win in court and lose at home. A family can silence an enemy and still poison itself. A woman can be saved from destruction and yet never again be trusted in the same unguarded way. That is the dark elegance of this storyline. The lawsuit works not because it proves something immediately, but because it forces every character to reveal what matters more to them than comfort. Chelsea must decide whether love means belief or honesty. Naomi must decide whether protection without truth is still protection. Bill must decide whether he is defending a woman under siege or preserving a system that has already harmed her. And Madison must confront the one question she has been trying to outrun from the beginning. Is she fighting a lie, or is she fighting the moment when a truth she managed to survive privately becomes impossible to survive publicly? In Fairmont Crest, those are never separate battles. They are the same battle, seen from different windows. And that is why this case feels larger than a professional dispute. It has the shape of a reckoning. Maybe Madison is innocent of the accusation itself. Maybe she is being used, framed, cornered, and strategically broken. But even that possibility offers no safety. because the deeper wound may already be open. The real secret may not be that Madison is guilty. It may be that everyone around her has begun to understand that innocence is not the same as purity, that love is not the same as knowledge, and that help from powerful people is never the same as freedom. If that truth comes fully into view, the lawsuit will be remembered as only the first knock at the door. What enters after it could change not just Madison's future, but Chelsea's faith, Naomi's conscience, Bill's authority, and the fragile illusion that this family can control what happens once buried compromises begin to breathe. All the content I create is purely speculative and based on personal opinions. If you find the video interesting and helpful, please support me with a like and a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments so everyone can discuss them. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Thank you very much. If you haven't followed us yet, please scroll down and subscribe.